Tell us about it.
We wanted to make a emotionally intense slasher film. When I say we, I mean starting with my writing partner Brian DeLue and I, and then my wife and producing partner Amanda. We wanted to make a film that would be inspired by Nightmare on Elm Street and have that kind of a character and that kind of a world, but to execute it in a way that felt like a independent drama, right? And we were like, what does an independent drama feel like? What kind of movie is that? You know, how do you create characters that have depth and an emotional life, but live completely in the world of a slasher? The idea was to create an iconic character.
Yes. So
we created a character named Moira Karp, who's our slasher, who is a 16-year-old girl who died as the result of bullying. There's a lore at the school we're at where she killed herself because she was bullied. In the story, she comes back to life, and she is her only emotion is rage. So at first she shows up to defend our main character against bullies, and she's hunting them down and killing them, and then her bloodlust expands to more and more people. And
a lot of the critics have called it a feminist slasher film, haven't they? So
yeah, I mean that's an interesting, that's a tough one because if it's feminist, right, it's because this character, this anti-hero character of Moira, is a young woman, and contrary to the way that slasher films usually operate, we tried to give her an emotional life and a backstory and a set of values and motivations and things she wants beyond just killing people for revenge. And it's funny, when we first finished the script and gave it to people, a lot of people said, oh, this story is cool, like this concept is interesting, but your monster talks too much, man. You can't do that, right? And so I started workshopping some of the scenes with actors that I could find and see how it played. Because she has, Moira, there's 3-page scenes of dialogue sometimes before somebody starts getting chopped up. And but I played around with that and saw, oh, this is actually, it's not the problem with our movie, it's the heart of the movie. This is what the movie is about. Yeah. And so that might be why somebody would call it feminist. Another reason I think is that the first bit of the movie, so the idea was the first 30 minutes is like an independent drama, and it barely feels like a horror.
The film builds and builds, doesn't it? Towards that.
Yeah, and the idea, I was inspired. That bit was inspired by Death Proof, because when I saw Death Proof in theaters, there was so much time spent with characters talking and being realistic that I forgot it was a horror movie. And when Kurt Russell shows up in the car to kill them, I was like, oh my god, they're gonna die, it's a horror movie, I forgot. It was the first time I felt scared for people getting killed in a horror movie in a long time. So we wanted to do something where it was like there was enough of a drama that you might forget it was a horror movie, but still have that sense of dread, right? But the first bits of the movie are all dudes on top of dudes. It's all these scenes of like, you know, even our main character who is the victim he's still muscular, and like the guys that are fucking with him are even more muscular, and it's just guys solving problems with this like brute physical, they just call each other fags and headlocks and punches and ass cracks, and you know, it's just so young male, and then Moira shows up and destroys them. Yeah. And there's this female energy that takes over the film and totally transforms it, and then suddenly it's about Moira's relationships with everybody, and Moira's relationship with a character named Caitlin, and her backstory with Christine, who was a student back when she was alive, and so I that might be part of it. I don't know. Like I'm not sure why it is or is not that. Another thing is that, so I think, you know, there's a trope in slasher movies and these kind of horror movies, and I'm thinking specifically of like Aja's Hills Have Eyes, where there's like a long, intense rape scene. Like rape scenes seem so important to, and I have made this vow that I would never shoot a rape scene unless it was really about the characters in a way that's very important, right? But it was still interesting to have weird sex scenes for me, right? So there's something that classifies, I think, as a sex scene between the slasher and Caitlin, and the girl who's the main girl, and it's sort of a metaphysical sex scene, and it has violence in it, but it's consensual. And I haven't quite seen a scene like that before in a movie like this, where there's a kind of like attraction and love between a girl and the slasher instead of this like forced violent sexuality. So there's a lot of choices in it that may or may not qualify it as feminist, but at least I sort of understand where that. I think if you make a character real, if you honor their emotional life, even in a low budget slasher film, then you're already on your way to sort of flipping the dominant tropes upside down.
Now, this is your first feature. Tell us a bit about your background. You've done comic books, haven't you?
Yeah, so I used to live in New York, where I was an experimental musician and experimental artist, and I would play like the electric sitar, and it was all very like deconstructed. And then I gave away my musical instruments, and I moved to Los Angeles, and I became a music video director. And I also wrote a graphic novel called Ballistic, which is takes place in a futuristic city, not futuristic, it's in the future, after an ecological collapse has created a city where all technology is alive. And a guy who wants to be a bank robber, his best friend is his gun, and his gun is a talking drug addict asshole. And they have adventures as a result of the gun being driven.
Well, you gave me a copy. I can't wait to read it. This is the UK premiere today. Are you looking forward to the screenings? What are you thinking about FrightFest in general so far?
Well, so far, I love being in London. I love FrightFest. There's like an intensity of love for the genre, which is very exciting. I've only had a chance so far to see a couple movies, and they're all movies directed by friends of mine that I've needed to see. The fact that we're showing 3 times in one day is totally insane.
Yes.
Like, I think after today, like we will have like tripled the amount of people who have ever seen this film, right? So that's like super daunting. It's definitely the case that when people see this movie, some people love it. I've had some people say it's my favorite horror movie of the year. It really touched me.
It's absolutely.
And there's other people who walk out. There's people who hate it. There's people who complain on Facebook. So I'm curious to see what that distribution of love and hate will be.
I'm sure there'll be some kind of
hate. Yeah. But I'm just hoping that people react. You know, like we have like a black metal soundtrack. There's like crazy kills. I want to hear people get into it. That's
I'm
the
not
important.
saying it really is one of my absolute. What's next for you? Career-wise?
So I have there's a couple things going on. One is I'm producing a movie called Holidays that's an anthology.
Yes.
And I got to direct one of the segments as well. It's all different directors doing a horror movie take on a different holiday.
Yes.
And I'm doing New Year's starring Lorenza Izzo, and we have like Kevin Smith is doing one, Gary Shore, the guys that did Starry Eyes, the guy that did The Pact. Sarah Smith, who did Midnight Swim. It's a really interesting roster.
How's it turning out? I mean,
it's all shot. Everything's been shot. We're almost done. We're actually pulling it together in September. The whole movie will be finished.
Brilliant.
And it looks really interesting. So that's wrapping up. And then I have 2 movies that I also wrote with Brian, who co-wrote Some Kind of Hate with me. One is another very low budget, crazy movie that we want to shoot in Singapore, where my wife and producing partner Amanda is from Singapore.
Right.
So we want to shoot this movie that is very much inspired by Possession, the 1981 Isabella Adjani film, about a breakup that turns into like a metaphysical cosmic horror. Wow. So we're doing one of those that we hope to shoot in Singapore, starring Noah Segan, who's become sort of my male muse. So that's one, and the other one is a film called Daniel that is a script I wrote with Brian based on his first novel. He's a novelist. And originally I met him because he's a novelist and I wanted to adapt this book, and it proved to be such a big visual world that I was like, oh, fuck, there's no way I'm going to get the money for this movie. I'm sorry I went down this road, man. There's no way I can get this movie made. Let's write a low-budget slasher. So that was 3 years ago. Now that Some Kind of Hate is finished and people have liked it, we've found producers for this bigger visual, sort of psychological ghost thriller.
So you're quite busy over the next...
I hope to be. I mean, the way this stuff works is like, the next thing you know, everybody's disappeared and you're just standing in a corner by yourself with your VHS copy of Nightmare on Elm Street, and, back to where
That's
you were.
great.